Hey everybody, welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I'm your host, Marquez Mosher, and this is my co-host, cohort, and eldest son, Austin Mosher. He and I always seem to bring out the feisty side of each other, and it leads to some very spirited conversations. There's never really any one topic. We see the world from many different perspectives, and sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't. Either way, it gets very interesting, so sit back, relax, and have a bit of fun at our expense as we explore some of the most unexpected perspectives you'll ever hear about the world we live in. So, let's get started. Welcome everybody, Marquez Says Show. I am Marquez. This is my co-host, Austin. Say hello, Austin.
Hello, Austin.
And we have a special guest today. We have Tehya Lauren. We're keeping in the family. Ooh, see? So we're going to be talking about today spirituality and just how it ties in with religion and the occult and anything. I mean, if you've listened to us before, you know that we kind of make this a free-flowing kind of thing. But I wanted to bring Tehya in because she's actually got a lot of good perspectives on what it is as well, because I'm sure growing up in our family, it was a little bit different. We didn't have necessarily any sort of actual religion or anything like that. I grew up with a Catholic mother. I grew up with a Church of God father. I had Jewish friends, some Native Americans. I mean, I know you guys had friends. Was there any particular one? Did you have any particular friends, Tehya, that were like more overtly religious or anything of that sort?
I did remember I had a friend, the twins, Rachel and Paige.
That's
they
right.
Did actually invite me to their Christian camp once.
Yeah.
And that was a very interesting experience, something I'd never done before. It's kind of communal.
Yeah.
Very
No, you're right. I
communal.
totally forgot about them.
Yeah, that's, I had a good time. It was really interesting to hear their perspective and like how do they, look towards their religion for guidance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because it's definitely the idea, I think, behind religion and spirituality is being able to explain what we cannot explain. There's the age-old thing about, do you consider yourself religious or spiritual? And it's kind of like, well, they're technically the same. It's just the semantics of organized religion. Are you talking about, what kind of, some people get scared off by saying spirituality, but I mean, I would consider myself a spiritual person, but I don't necessarily take it to extremes. I don't know. I mean, what, as far as,
were you gonna say
I feel like religion is just like being part of a congregation versus spirituality is where you're like branching on your own.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see the difference between the two.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I feel like religion is more so part of a group sort of thing. Not that you have to exercise it within that group, but there is a group of people that are within those religious sects. Mm-hmm. And spirituality can be so individual. And people shy away from spirituality because they'll be like, oh, well, that means you don't really believe in anything. You just believe in everything. Well, that's not exactly what spirituality is. Spirituality is just your own identification and your own connection with whatever higher power or energy or whatever.
Yeah, with your guys' mom, I mean, she's kind of in that realm now as far as I don't know if you want to call it spirituality and stuff, but you've now seen it as older kids, especially for you, Tehya, since you're still up in Northern California. How has that been different, than the way you were raised, and how do you like it? Do you not like it? Or is it kind of something that you've just kind of incorporate with your own personal stuff?
I don't really see it much different than childhood. I think you've made us very open-minded, so every perspective is a good one. It feels communal, but they definitely go by spiritual more. Like they would call themselves spiritual and not a religion because they encompass everyone. They're accepting of everyone's beliefs and kind of believe that all comes together to one source. Whether you say that's God with a capital G or a little g or just source, universe, whatever word you want to put to it, it's just like everyone's kind of like trying to go towards the same path.
I like
of enlightenment.
I like what you said with the big G, little g, because if you just invert those, it's amazing how so much is similar. Just so much becomes kind of like, if you're not thinking of it as the God, but just a God, that makes things so much nicer where we can all kind of agree on certain things. I mean, the more I learn,
it nicely meshes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely meshes the whole, like, if you believe in several gods, it's just kind of like divine power is kind of what the point is.
I find myself, you and I have talked about this where, when you talk about going into that more spiritual, excuse me, kind of, when people talk about occult and things of that sort, we've had conversations where we've been in houses. You've had those experiences where some people just laugh and say, you're crazy, it's all in your head. And then other times we're like, no, we saw something, we felt something, there was something there, and I know ever since you were a little girl, that's something that you've been very much in tune with. And I like that. I think that's a really good thing, because I think that means you're in tune with what's going on in the universe, and most people are not willing to be open and accept that. I don't know, is that kind of how it feels for you, that it makes you closer, it kind of brings you in?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I feel like a lot of people tend to go towards religion for answers, like you said, and a lot of time that comes from fear of like what's beyond our lives here, like in now, like where we can tangibly tell we're alive, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, being able to have like a sort of like sense perhaps of the history of an area, kind of, it feels nice in the sense that that there's more going on than you can really see in this world.
Okay, so you know what, we're talking about that. I say, so let's go for it. What would be the one thing that you've found so interesting that you've had happen to your life, where that was kind of, this is so surreal, this is so strange, and yet you knew it was real, and just made you kind of, it just not necessarily changed your way of looking at things, but it certainly made you kind of think twice about what we call reality?
Good question.
That's a great question. Kind of one that's like hard to just like.
Or any. You could actually come up with any, of course, but.
I did have an instance that we have the family ranch out in the middle of nowhere, basically. On Christmas of all days, I was on my way back at midnight in the pitch black, and somehow I saw a man on the road who had just looked really disheveled, and he was just there and just in the blackness. And I drove by thinking to myself that like it was a dangerous situation to approach, or do anything about it. But as I kept going down the road, I just couldn't help but to think to myself I needed to turn around and do something. Yeah. And I had just been gifted a really lovely blanket, and I had just had the instinct to keep that in my back seat and not in the trunk with every other gift that I was given that day. And so I turned around and I gave him the blanket and I told him Merry Christmas. And I didn't think much of it, but when I asked later on, no one's seen that man ever there before.
Oh, jeez.
Never. Like, no one's ever seen a hitchhiker or a homeless man camping. I mean, he just out of nowhere and never seen again.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. There just isn't people. They're just that's not usual.
Completely out of the way. Someone could not walk to that location without being spotted by someone. Right. And it was just very bizarre to be so late at night on Christmas Day.
Exactly. Who would be out there?
In the pitch black. It was really, really weird. Like, there was absolutely no light. So the only way I saw him is because the headlight had just dashed on him right by the bridge.
See, that's cool, because that's just those are things that happen. And I guess it's true when people say if you're not looking for them, you won't find them. And it's not that you'll find them if you are looking for them, but I think it's just
you gotta
something
have your eyes open to the possibilities.
To be open to it. You just have to be open to the possibilities. And I know for me, I get really frustrated when I'm talking to people that aren't even willing to entertain those possibilities, and very frustrated with the ones that on the other extreme, where it's like all about the Bible says, the Bible says, the Bible says. And I'm like, that's even more annoying, when the sense of the Bible is technically a fictional book. I mean, you can call it historical, nonfiction, fiction.
Words.
I know that could be somewhat argumentative.
I know. I was like, oh, you're trying to start some comments.
But I've said that before, because it's something that if you really know if you've ever known the history of it, you realize it's written hundreds of years after. It was written by a select few. They had lots of gospels that were eliminated from it, and yet they hold this up as the centerpiece of a belief system. And it's just kind of hard to go, that's really what everything comes down to? The crux of what your belief system is that? And you're not willing to think that there's something more about, what about Native American culture? What about Far East culture? What about Star Wars and the Force? I mean, it
is ridiculous to think, like, let's say, okay, I have a friend, my friend's cousin was told by the friend's cousin's brother,
3 generations ago.
Exactly. And then they happen to communicate that down the line through some sort of telephone event. And I'm telling you this right now, and that story is 100% true. Every detail happened exactly how I said it did. It's amazing to think that that's what we build the whole pillars on. Go ahead.
But I feel like the Bible is not like trying to lie to people and make them go a certain way. I think it's just more like folk tales.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's
stories that have perhaps happened or perhaps have just been enhanced to teach a lesson. They're not meant to be taken at face value.
And that's the best takeaway from the Bible,
Absolutely.
though, is to the lessons of what it is and not the story itself.
And that's exactly right. You nailed it with that concept of take it for what it is. Do not put too much importance on it. Take the good from it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And that's the same thing we should all be able to do, with everything else, with the experiences that we have, and that the idea that we know everything is just in and of itself seems ridiculous, but it's hard to not try to gravitate towards that because humans, the unknown scares us, and that fear creates all sorts of emotions that can be positive or negative. And being able to understand that we don't know it all, and having experiences like the one that you said you had, and being open to it, that's how we're going to grow just as a species, probably. Because what are we going to look like 100 years from now? And I don't mean physically, but think about the belief systems now from 100 years down the road. It's going to be different. What do you, Tehya, as far as like the aspects of what you take? What is your biggest takeaway from what you like about being open to certain things, as far as being able to accept the different perspectives on how people feel about the universe? Is there anything that you particularly like about that?
Well, you're always going to be needing new perspectives in order to evolve your own mindset. So I definitely think it's important that we do have different views. I enjoy that. And I do enjoy debating with people. Well, how did you come to the conclusion that this is what you feel? Like for me, it's hard because I have a lot of things that you can't physically touch or see to explain. So it can be a little difficult fighting my case with others. But it's still interesting for me to try.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
Well, and that's what we need. We need more people that are willing to do that, because
have an open dialogue. Yeah,
and because I know for a fact that you're open to listening to those other dialogues, and you can actually articulate what you're trying to say as far as this is where I'm coming from, and I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm just telling you that there's another option and there's another aspect to this. And
exactly.
It's a hard thing to do, and many more people, like, part of that think more, care more, live more, is that first element is awareness. If we're not willing to be aware of our own limitations and our personal awareness, as far as in addition to the situational awareness, it's hard to necessarily get to the kindness because we care more, because we're locked in and we're scared. Does it make you feel like it makes you, I won't say necessarily the better person, but does it allow you to be more empathetic, do you think? You think that would actually help for other people as well, if they were more open to accepting spirituality, and for that matter, I guess religion too?
I do, because I feel like a lot of pain comes from feeling like a lack of comfort or structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's very human emotion to go through, and we want to be solitary, like we want to be on our own, but we very much have the drive to be included in groups. So I do think it's a good thing to strive towards.
You nailed it. That was actually when you said about the fear, the lack. I think I just wrote something about that, where that you're right, that lack of, I think it was a post about love, and it was Leo Buscaglio's, one of his quotes, and it would definitely, you're right. It's there, the hurt and stuff comes from a lack of something. And that may be a lack of understanding, might be lack of love, might be lack of, whatever that is, but that triggers, you're right, those human emotions. And you guys know it. I always talk about being a social loner. It's I don't mind being by myself, but I also, you need that social aspect. And, I can talk. You stick me in the middle of a group, and I'll just keep talking and answering questions. But the first moment I can escape, I will.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I know. I mean, we obviously know Austin. He can talk. I mean, you know, that's kind of his thing and stuff. And I always see you kind of as a blend of that too. It's
I'm just more reserved. I only step in when I feel like it's a good point. Otherwise, I like to let others talk it out and just, like I said, absorb what they're saying, and opposed to trying to just feed in my opinion.
Yeah, and see, and that ties back in with the whole your belief systems, whether you are spiritual, you know, what do you know, I guess I always come back to like the Native Americans in the Far East have such similarities, but yet they were on the opposite sides of the world. You know, where exactly did that come from? You know, how did they derive that? The shaman aspect of things. You know, I know your guys' aunt has a lot of that. How does
Reiki.
Yeah, and how? I mean, some of that stuff. I mean, what's a quick explanation of that, if you have one? Because I'm not even all that clear on it.
I mean, I guess the quickest, easiest way to go about it is just about like moving energy in the body. Like everyone has the 7 chakras. If you're familiar with those, they go basically span up from like the bottom of your hips, like all the way to the crown of your head. And they're all responsible for the different emotions or actions of the body. I guess the easiest way to say is like they're basically really good at being able to tell you or help you move that energy through to just feel more aligned with yourself.
Yeah.
And or some of them can be spiritual practitioners, and they can speak to your guides, spirit guides, or your ancestors, whoever you really look for guidance.
Yeah,
that's kind of what they are.
You being able to explain, like, just with our conversation here about this stuff, is so much more, and I hate to say it, but so much more than, say, the average citizen. And it's sad, because there's people twice as old as you that would not even be able to articulate something like that.
They wouldn't even know what the chakras are.
Yeah, they, you know, and I don't know what each one is, but I know what they are. One thing that I've actually just gotten into, which I don't even know if you guys know, that was that we were starting to do, April and I were starting to do yoga because we were with the lockdown. Yeah. And I'm loving it. I really, really enjoy it. So, but
those
of course,
are very important in yoga for the principles, for sure.
And it's very beginning, but it's stuff that aligns and helps me kind of go, drop your shoulders quick, because that's where I always do. I always put my shoulders up in my neck and stuff, and just things like that. But I also appreciate it because of the philosophy behind it. You're getting in touch, listening to your breathing, and so on and so forth. So, I wonder, though, do you think there's any downside when people take it to an extreme and go into that occult? I mean, the occult in and of itself, to me, is not a bad thing. It's just they channel their belief system into something a little darker. But
well, I mean, I think that's perfectly fine in the sense that there's a balance to life, that you need light and dark. You just can't be more of one than the other. So, like, I think that those that are like light workers that will refuse any kind of shadow self, they refuse any kind of negativity in the world, everything's beautiful, everything's blessed, isn't really a realistic view. But it's not realistic to be like everything's dark, everything is miserable, the world is doomed. So I think it is in the middle. Like you have to find the healthy balance. It's the yin and yang principle, like all over again, you know?
Yeah, I think what you said, that's that example of being able to have the balance, the light and the dark. And it's, again, I do feel that the world could be in such a better place if these kind of conversations were had, but we do live in a Judeo-Christian founded country.
The Western world. And
it's very difficult necessarily to have these conversations when someone just doesn't want to admit that there could be something outside of what they've been taught for the last 4 generations of their existence, their heredity. So,
well, and then also today's day and age, there's a lot of people that don't believe in anything. They're just completely
apathy.
Yeah, and that's
right. There's no nothing. There's no God. There's no energy. There's no spirit. There's no nothing. There's a lot of people, especially younger people, that believe we are just an accumulation of what we are. We're on this earth. We die, and nothing happens. Like
and I mean, there's a possibility that may be true, but I have a hard time believing that when we know that the chemical makeup, that we have is energy. We have electricity. That's what's literally running through us. So it's kind of hard to believe that, how, like you talk about the chakras and you talk about energy working in light and dark. It's kind of, that seems to me that makes so much more sense than some all-being knowledge, other than, person or entity that's controlling everything.
Well, it's a very archaic belief, but that came from all the way back when, where humans needed a reason to come together. Very nomadic on their own, like they had their little mixes, but you had to find a way to like create civilization, and religion was the easiest way to do that back then. It's like getting everyone on the same page with the law and order. Like, okay, we're not going to murder people, right? We're going to live in this city together. We're not going to murder each other every night. Okay, great. We'll do it for our God. Like, it was worth something, and it was good, and it worked out. And then humans got a little, corrupty, like they always do. And then the church became more of a power than anything.
Yeah, no, that's, and there you go. The history of religion 101 for everybody out there. That's pretty much, Tehya just summed it up right there. Religion
is pure. Humans aren't necessarily pure all the time.
Yeah.
So that's why I never have a problem with religion any sort. Yeah. But it's what people do with anything. Like, you could manipulate anything in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you put that very succinctly. That was actually a very good description of it. So hopefully listeners are actually going to go back and rewind that part and be like, because it has its place, and it even has its place now. But I think that may be part of the struggle, is that we're struggling on how does religion or traditional religion fit in with the science and what we know of today. I think that's a big chunk of it.
They can coexist too, but there's such a push against science. In like both camps, you've got people in the science camp saying there's absolutely no possibility of any sort of God or religion, and then you got people in the religion and God camp saying, well, science can't possibly be right because we were told this. But we're seeing an influx of people in the middle, though, that are like, hey, they can coexist, they do coexist, and we need to work on finding that balance, which is like what you were saying earlier, Tehya, about balance is everything.
Yeah, and I think working within understanding that there is more than what we know is a huge, huge part of it.
Exactly.
I love seeing historians that are religious, like actual priests or high whatevers in the particular religion, and seeing how they try to accommodate it and make things work together. That's really cool, because that they're open-minded. And and even the big churches, the Christianity, Catholic and such, they're opening up to the fact that the extraterrestrials, and don't even get me started on the ancient astronaut theories about it was misunderstood technology back in the day when what they thought was an angel was probably an extraterrestrial, and all that kind of stuff, because that'll be another episode altogether. Probably have to do that one by myself.
You gotta do a conspiracy theory.
Yep.
Ooh, that could be like one of our side ones that we do every now and then, like conspiracy theories.
Yeah. So it's definitely, that's definitely where we would like things to go. So, I talk about these ideas and the balance, and you always get pushback. You always get that, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or in your guys' cases, it might be, you're too young. How could you possibly know? And it's ridiculous, because that's not what it's about, especially if you take it one step further into if you believe in reincarnation, or if you believe in the fact that you can have an old soul. Think about if you believe in that, or if that's even, if you want to call it quote unquote true, imagine the experiences that you have within your bodies or your souls, minds and stuff
that you're just not tapped into.
It could be there. How do you feel about that old soul, that idea of being an old soul, or being able to have previous past lives and stuff?
I definitely relate to that. I would consider myself an old soul, and I definitely believe that we do this lifetime a couple times at least. I don't believe it's just one and done. That seems a little silly. But I think it is about just learning your lessons in life, and if you didn't get it done the first time, that's fine. You're gonna do it again.
Yeah, it's kind of like you don't want to call it Groundhog Day, but then again, when it comes back to what we've started this with, as far as religion and spirituality and occult, it's something you have to believe. You actually have to take that leap of faith that that's what it is, because you can't prove it. And,
oh my God, it's like the Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Remember
Yay!
him
I'm so
crossing the
proud.
bridge?
Oh, I'm so proud. Thank you. Raised with the classics.
It is like that. It's
Raised
very
with the
much like
classics.
that. Like
Yeah.
these are things you can't see, which I kind of find ridiculous because a lot of times the argument I hear from people is like, well, I can't experience, I don't feel that and I don't see that, so it mustn't be real. And then they go on a sermon about their God, and I'm completely fine to listen and understand that point of view, but how can you say that my view that is invisible is any less than your view that is invisible?
Yeah, absolutely. And to take it, April and I have had this conversation. She just rolls her eyes when stuff is that. But today's religion, organized religion, I guess that's a big differentiation. Is the organized religion? I don't know how much of it is really taught on the teachings of Jesus, if there was a Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't see how what he so-called preached and taught, how it translates into what other people, to what organized religion is. And yet I do see it on splinter groups, the ones that are smaller, that are more accepting of everybody, like you talked about. And even with some of the what you would call a cult, the negative connotation.
Right.
I think that's a bad thing, because almost everything is a cult by definition, a group of people believing in a single thing. But we have a negative connotation to it because nowadays the cults
Christianity, actually. I mean, like the image of the devil is a Wiccan god.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with demons or anything like that. I mean, if you look in the Bible, there's no description of horns or goat-like features, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really just like the Christians taking advantage of the situation. They didn't want anyone else's religion mixing in the pot. So they're like, oh, look at this guy. This God, he's evil. This is the devil.
Yeah, no, and so many of our religious holidays are taken because they were trying to win over, like you said, Wiccan. That's that aspect of it, and all of the.
Well, it was the opposite. They were trying to destroy them.
Well, no, in this case, but I mean, a lot of the fall festival, like Halloween and stuff like that, were actually go back much further. And,
right. Well, it was an attempt to write away those other histories, though, and those other cultures. It was basically
it was trying to write it out.
With
right
it was
now,
trying to write it out.
This is exactly a great example of what's kind of going on right now. I have been more or less taught that it was a way to integrate those people.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But and I know better, though, because you're right. As soon as you bring it to my attention, you're right. It wasn't actually to integrate them and say, hey, we're meeting you halfway. It was actually, hey, we're going to trick you because we want to get rid of you. We want to eliminate you. We want to eliminate your belief system. And, and then so we'll throw you this, but, next year it becomes less and less and less. So you too, that's a great example of like things going on in today's world about there's that one image of it that we've been taught and that one perspective that comes from even maybe a generational thing, whereas the next generation realizes, no. It was darker than that. It was more evil than that. It was actually much more malicious than that.
Right.
There's speculation that, how we have a lot of like ancient arcs and like, oh gosh, what is it called? The one in Egypt, it's the Sphinx. Oh yeah, it's the Sphinx. Yeah. How the noses are always broken off. Well, that comes back to actually, again, religion wanted to get rid of the ethnicity of the structures and would purposely take the noses or whatever just to make it look a little bit more white.
Yeah, it's crazy the things that we're starting to learn. And I mean, we have to be, the people say we don't want to, you can't rewrite history. Actually, you can. Because you can find that it becomes more accurate and more balanced because, whoever wins, to the victor goes the spoils. The winner gets to write history.
Right.
But now we realize that, like you just mentioned with the Sphinx and how I've watched a bunch of the Egyptian things and how some dynasties to try to be erased completely. Like they got rid of everything that had to do with that bloodline. And, it was like they were doing it back then as far as saying, if we get rid of them because they believed in the afterlife, if they didn't exist here and now, then they won't exist in the hereafter.
Right.
But but I thought that was very interesting that you're right. Both of you actually started jumping on me about, wait. No. It wasn't an integration of it.
It's
it was
definitely
not a
not.
positive
It
thing.
was very malicious in intent. Yeah. There was
and you're right.
no compromises, really.
And it's funny because I do know that with some of them. I don't know about probably as many as that have come up because I haven't been as much touch, but I don't know why, but the thing that keeps popping in my head right now is remember the Scooby Doo and Zombie Island? You know, there was the one Scooby Doo where they didn't actually unmask anybody. There was no bad guy. That was the one. That was the one.
Well, there was a bad guy. It was just a supernatural one for once.
Okay, yes, exactly. Where it was basically somebody they couldn't prove. They couldn't, physically unmask. And it's the only Scooby Doo I've ever seen or ever even know about where they actually left it like that. Like they left it where there was no explanation for it. You did have to understand that it was supernatural. You could believe it or you don't. But there was no physical reality that was.
Are you talking about the first live action Scooby Doo?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay, I was like, that's not how that one ended.
The animated one.
Exactly.
But the live action ones went with the theme of like real monsters.
Right, I was like, that's not how that one ended. I was like,
no. There was an actual Scooby. It was the plantation down in the South.
I remember it.
Yeah. It stuck with me all these years because it was the only one that I've ever seen that was like they did not unmask anybody. Like you said, it was just left to basically. What do you believe? What do you believe it was a supernatural? Do you not? I mean, it was.
I don't know what I've been doing with my time, but I know a lot about Scooby Doo, and so there's like two different Scooby universes. Basically, there's like the red shirt Scooby universe where everything's supernatural, and then the green shirt.
Is that a real thing?
Seems like
That's cool.
I'm serious. You can look that up on the internet. There's theories.
Okay, I have a very important question for you. Have you watched the new Scooby Doo movie, also known as Scoob?
I did not get to it yet, but the internet has spoiled all the good scenes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either.
They actually had to, I believe it was either a PG-13 movie and they had to drop it to a PG, and the director was all upset because he was like,
we talked about this.
I can't get some of my things.
I feel like we've moved from the topic to promoting this movie, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that.
And welcome to Marquez Says, Tay. But actually, funny thing is that it does kind of tie in because we're talking about, which belief system, which Scooby Doo world do you want to believe in?
Yeah,
which one do you do?
It's true.
So
red shirt or green shirt.
It's it goes with the whole aspect of the spirituality and stuff. But you know what? I mean, that's actually probably a good place to kind of wrap this up anyway. So
true.
So
yeah. And on Scooby Doo, go buy Scooby Doo.
So did you have anything else, Tay? I mean, as far as like thinking about a lot of times I know Austin and I have triggers that ends up at the end of the show, and we kind of go, oh, we didn't even think about that because something got triggered.
Right.
I want to make sure since we're not in the same place, physically. Was there anything that kind of came up that you were thinking that was like, I wanted to talk about, or I wanted to say that?
Not really, other than if you are interested in any kind of if you believe that there's ghosts but you haven't ever seen one, or just kind of you ever get deja vu even. These are all little signs. The curiosity are signs that you could be, more tapped into. Whatever source you want to consider it, whether it's I've heard a lot of people say that they believe God is within everyone, and I can agree with that statement. I just think for me, I rephrase it to the universe. That makes me more comfortable, considering I'm not necessarily part of an organized religion.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I think that's really my final thought is that if you're not open to the idea that it could happen for you, or if you're apathetic in the sense that you feel like it's never gonna happen, there is no savior, there's no salvation. It won't come to you. It needs you to be curious before it comes to you.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to be open to it. That makes absolute sense.
And that goes back into what we talk about a lot: is you get what you give, and what you put out into the world, you'll get back.
Yep. And then
I mean, it's as simple as just being I just look for a tad bit of a sign, ask a question, and then forget about it. And if you see that come up, if you forget about it and you see that little sign come up, then you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right.
No, you're absolutely true. So, anything else, Austin?
No, that's good.
All right.
That was a good conversation. Thanks for coming on, Tay.
So,
As
usual.
It was nice.
Yeah,
it's fun.
See, maybe we can make this a regular thing. We'll see.
We'll see. I'm surprised I even got a moment for this. I'm literally standing in a parking lot.
That's a nice parking lot.
Well, it's working.
It is a nice parking lot. It's very green. I'm so happy to have shade.
It's a very nice tree. I would have never thought it was a parking lot.
Yeah. All right,
I just ruined the secret.
You did.
I know. Well, it's okay.
I blew it at the end. I gave myself out.
And then you almost did it too.
Yeah, see, but being open, there you go. Just got to be open to it.
Honesty.
So. Cool. All right. Well,
sweet.
Okay. As usual, guys, think more, care more, live more, and remember, you can change your life. You can change the world one decision at a time. We will talk to you next time.